Today's episode of Vice Versa, we're talking about Blue Origin taken to the skies, Tesla's virtual power plant in California, full self-driving beta subscriptions, Jeep going electric, and more. And as usual, I am joined by Ricky Roy. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing good, Matt, but we also have a very special guest this episode, Alex from Ticker Symbol U. He's one of our new friends and fellow YouTubers. He runs a really awesome channel called Ticker Symbol U, where he talks about investments in ARK, one of the most innovative funds that talk about some of the coolest companies doing the coolest stuff. Alex, how's it going?
Good. I'm excited to join you guys as the third bald man on the show.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We're setting a trend here. There you go.
So, yeah, we've got a really fun roster of topics for the day. But as always, let's start with you, Matt. What was your video this week?
I did a video on kind of structural massless energy storage battery breakthroughs that have been happening recently and what it could mean for the future of everything from your cell phone to cars. It's kind of an amazing kind of breakthrough that's been happening.
And it's really doing really well. Go check it out. It's a fantastic video. Alex, what about you? What was your video this week?
So I tried to capture the effects of the billionaire space race between Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson.
Which we're going to be talking about in just a minute.
Yep.
Very good video, by the way. I really liked it.
Oh, thanks.
It was a really good video. It's a funny thing about YouTube. Sometimes you never know what will resonate with your viewers and audience. But this week, I made a video on... I've been working on this video for about 2-3 weeks now, but about the range and towing effects on EVs. And there's been all this kind of talk about why is it that EVs can't tow? They lose so much range. So I kind of broke it down and modeled why exactly that is. So if you're curious about that or you have a Cybertruck reservation, definitely check it out. But I think in the future, we're going to have this figured out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Are we ready to jump into the first story?
Yes. Without further ado, let's jump into the lead story here today. And let's talk about Jeff Bezos and his company Blue Origin and their first flight into space. So when it rains, it pours. We had a story about Richard Branson doing this very thing last week. But Bezos chose a very important day in history. This is July 20th was the Apollo 11 moon landing date. So even as Richard Branson kind of one-upped him and got there first, he held strong and wanted to target that date. So one of the really cool things is they reached a height of 66 miles, which is 10 miles more than Branson's ride on the 11th. And we talked about this before. Why should you care? These are companies that are trying to foster a new age of space tourism for the very rich. But you got to remember that taking a flight across the Atlantic Ocean to go to New York or to London 50 years ago was the same sort of thing. So here's to hoping that this means that we're going to have cheap space travel coming forward. It was really a kind of a fun story. Here are the people that actually went up there with them. They kind of had the full spectrum of people, an 18-year-old from the Netherlands for some reason, an 82-year-old old aviation pioneer from Texas, and I think his brother, Bezos' brother. So a successful launch and return, which is always important. You want to make sure that you get these guys back home. And just a really awesome story. And now we have potentially 3 private companies. Let's not forget, it wasn't long ago, there was no such thing as like a private aviation aerospace company. It was always public. It was always governments that did this. So now we have 3 viable companies with 3 rocket technologies that they're all pursuing and advancing. And I think it's going to be the most incredible 10 years in space innovation in history.
Yeah, I was curious, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, Alex, was to get your take on this, because a lot of people miss why this kind of stuff has so much potential for the future and what's going on with spaceflight and why we should even care about space tourism. What's your take on all this?
Yeah, sure. So that's definitely a great question. Why should we care? And I think, we can look back at history and we can ask the same question about airplanes. Oh, that's nice if you rich people can travel in the sky instead of buy buggies and buy the Model T or whatever the automobile was back then. Why should we care, right? Oh, a few rich people can have cell phones in their pockets when everyone else still has landlines. Why should we care? Oh, a few rich people can begin affording personal computers. Why should we care? And that's kind of the narrative that gets played over and over right before humanity as a whole is about to win big. And the reason to care is because it's going to be a launching pad for new innovation, right? So just like the airplane and the cell phone and the personal computer spawned all sorts of massive industries, both in terms of personal travel and logistics, so too will space travel. I bet in our lifetime, you will be able to buy a tourist two-way ticket to the moon, for example. I would put my money on the fact that if we really wanted to, before we pass, we will be able to buy that ticket. And that's because of the innovations being made today. So, for example, one thing that totally slipped everyone's notice is that the Blue Origin flight was fully automated. It had no staff. It was a full civilian crew. And everyone there was a passenger, no pilots, unlike the Virgin Galactic flight. And I think that is really a testament to how far robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, control systems and all these other things all three of our channels talk about have progressed in the last 2, 3, 4 decades. So I'll start there. There's a lot more to talk about, but I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that jumped out at me from all this was beyond just the why does it matter is also kind of the symbolism of the 82-year-old woman that was on there. Her name's Wally Funk. And she was part of the original Mercury program that had trained a whole bunch of women that most of us never knew they did. And some of these women actually performed better at their tasks and tests than some of the men, but they never got to go to space. And so the fact that Wally Funk has now gone to space on this, there's a nice symbolism to that kind of rang for me. And if you've seen the TV show For All Mankind, it's on Apple TV Plus. They focus on those women Mercury pilots, and they actually do get to go to the moon. It's an alternate history of what if. And it's kind of fun to see there's characters in the show that are clearly based on Wally Funk that are in the show main characters. It was really kind of cool to see the real life Wally Funk get to go to space.
Absolutely.
Sorry, guys. I was just looking. People have been talking about our levels and hearing all of us. I'm hoping that everybody can hear Alex just fine. I just listened to a really quick second. It seemed okay, but let us know if there's any weirdness. Maybe close YouTube and come back or something if you're having any issues. So I mentioned before about the innovations when you have private companies doing this stuff. That's exactly what you get when you have private companies. When you have Amazon, a man who obsesses about robotic warehouses that can ship you goods in 24 hours or less and do so with very minimal staff and with ease and efficiency in mind. This is the sort of stuff you get. NASA's always done a good job, but I think when you have private, especially people in the tech industry, you have a new take on what matters, and the cost. What will happen to the cost per launch is going to be the story that will play out here. Alex, you mentioned, cell phones were expensive once upon a time. Everything starts off that way. How we drive some of these costs down in space is not as easy as a cell phone, because rockets and fuel, these things are not exactly going to ever have economies of scale like millions and millions of iPhones. But when we have more innovation, when you have more automation, this is kind of the cool stuff you get when you have private companies doing this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was also kind of curious about during the launch they brought this up, but the fuel choice that they're using. There's basically 3 kinds of fuels that these different companies use. It's kerosene, methane, or hydrogen. And I guess hydrogen is obviously the most energy efficient, the most energy punch, but it's the most difficult to store. Kerosene is the easiest to store, but not as energy efficient. And then you got methane that's kind of in the middle. SpaceX is using, I think, methane for their stuff. And for this, it was hydrogen. So the entire launch, it was just basically blowing steam out of the back of the rocket as it was taking off. So if you want to kind of bring up the idea of is this going to be a sustainable way to get to space? It's there actually is a very sustainable way to get to space just by using something like hydrogen. I'm also curious, I don't know if either of you guys know why SpaceX is choosing methane over going with hydrogen. Either of you had any idea?
Yeah, no. So RP1, which is kerosene, is what they've historically used on the Falcon 9. And Starship is moving to methane, to methalox, basically. It's a methane and oxygen oxidizer. And stuff like the space shuttle use hydrogen. Hydrogen makes a lot of sense because even though hydrogen isn't that abundant here on Earth, in the universe, it's everywhere. It's the most abundant element by a wide margin. But it is still tricky. That sounds great in theory, but still you have to freeze it, so you have to control the temperatures much more than you do with something like methane or RP1. And it's also trickier to harness because if you're gonna produce your own hydrogen. We've kind of talked about this Matt on our channels. I think maybe Alex, maybe even you have, but like, electrolysis and the other methods of producing hydrogen aren't that simple. Part of why I think Elon chose methane is you could potentially, if there's like a methane deposit, like methane's escaping from the ground on Mars or something, you could potentially capture it and have your own rocket fuel from other sources. And we've known that there's like methane on Titan and various other celestial bodies, moons, planets, and stuff around the solar system. So methane is interestingly not the best at any one thing, but it's a good all-around choice. It's also methane burns cleaner, much like hydrogen. So if you want reusability, you want to get away from kerosene. Kerosene burns, it's quite dirty, so you'd have to like really get in there and clean out the engines if you wanted to reuse some of the stuff. So like all of engineering, it's a trade-off. It's a game of trade-offs, and you got to pick which one you want. Hydrogen does have really cool perks, but we've talked about this with cars and everything else. There's some serious drawbacks too. It's really tough to keep it all in there. I mean, it's such a small element.
Yep. Any other kind of finishing words on this story, or should we move to the next one?
A very important comment just came in from Bobby. He says, "What a beautiful Irish beard." I concur with that assessment.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think they're talking about me.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right.
Awesome.
I think the last comment for that is, there's definitely going to be future innovations in fuel, sustainability, automation, and all that. But it's important to keep our eyes on the prize, right? When it comes to unlocking space, it's going to be one of those things where today it's really expensive and not really sustainable and not really fully automated. But in 10 years, this whole industry could be very different, both in terms of, how we're getting people to the ISS, how and why we're going to the moon and Mars and beyond. So I think, if you look at this as the start of something big, instead of, why should we care about its position right now? I think you'll be a lot more excited about it. So,
yeah, I agree. It's for the future, not for the now. We got to keep an eye on the prize as to where we're going, not where we are right now. So if we're going to jump to the next story, next up, Tesla is inviting some of its energy customers into a virtual power plant system in California. And I actually got the email for this, which I thought was weird because I have a Powerwall, but I'm not in California. But I got invited to this as well, which was, whoops. Hang on. Technical difficulties on my side. Okay, here we go. So
of course you got invited and I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I got it. It's like you'd think they would segment their email blast to people who live in California, but I got it. What they proposed in the email was they listed out several benefits, which were exporting credits during peak periods to basically help your community for like peak usage during the summer months, cleaning the power grid, which would help reduce how many like coal power plants would have to kind of spin up, stabilizing the overall grid, and just as a united Tesla community, which they said is just an amazing community, kind of stepping up and kind of showing what they can do, and energy security. So I thought it was interesting that they pointed all these things out. The one thing that I thought was odd in the wording was in the exporting credits during peak periods, they said customers could earn credit for their energy that is sent back to the grid. They didn't say they would or they can. It was an odd choice of words to me because it's clear that they may not have lined up if the utilities will be paying back for this use or not yet. And I'm here in Massachusetts. My Powerwall is already part of a virtual power plant system where I am. It was created by the utilities, not by Tesla specifically, but it's done through Tesla, and there's Sonnen batteries are also part of it. So it's like there's different companies that can participate in the program. And so far this summer, I've seen several times where 4:00 in the afternoon, suddenly my Powerwall just go into peak discharge mode for like 3 hours and just drains down by, 50, 60, 70% as it's going into the grid. And at the end of the summer, I'll get a payback out of this. Depending on how much energy I put into the grid, I will get a check at the end of the summer. And so to me, that's a huge incentive for this kind of program. And if it's basically just right now, the proposal, what they wrote together for people that would want to participate, it's basically just you'll feel good about yourself. You're helping your community. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that will jump on board with that, but there's going to be people that are not going to want to do that because they're going to want to make sure that their energy is their own. But if there was a dollar sign hanging on this, you'd probably get those people to participate too. So I think they're going to have the risk of lower participants in the program if there's not some kind of credit system attached to it. So that was my biggest concern out of this. What do you guys take on this?
Me, you, me.
Yeah,
sure.
ahead,
So
Alex.
I think you're spot on, right? I think there's two things you can do to increase adoption of stuff like this. First is the dollar sign, as you mentioned, and second could be like even a scoreboard, right? Like here's how many kilowatt hours you gave back to the grid over the last month. This helped stabilize N rooms in a hospital, right, which need reliable power 24/7, and then show them the effects, like the socioeconomic effects of saving power, returning it to the grid, making it more reliable for everyone, things like that. I think the scoreboard and the dollar sign together would do exactly what you just said, which is like, oh, sign me up. I want to watch those numbers tick up and know exactly, like quantifiably how I'm doing my part.
I think that's such a fantastic idea. You always read about, incentive structures for people. Clearly, financial incentives are good, but I think maybe even more important, especially early on, because if you think about the adopters currently who have Powerwalls, we're at a stage where we're at the early part of the adoption curve for stuff like this. A leaderboard and bragging rights would be the ultimate thing. Yeah. So I always read about this like in Freakonomics and some of the other books that I read, that you'd be shocked that some of the best incentives aren't money. They really are more about things like a leaderboard. I love that idea. You should pitch that, and hopefully Tesla could probably roll that out. But if you could like look at that table and look at how much you've output and how much you've done, that'd be such a cool idea. I have not gotten that email. I
don't know
Tesla
why.
does not like me for some reason. I don't know. I get like zero involvement from them for anything. So I haven't heard anything yet, but I'd love to be a part of this because we've talked about this before. This is how you clean up the grid. Being able to just in a quick moment and forget about just not running peaker power plants, but this is how you avoid power outages. If you were to have a brownout because suddenly there's a 90 or 100 degree day in 90 degrees in California, especially like in the coastal areas, we lose our mind. 90 degrees is very hot to us. Everyone's air conditioning and you get brownouts and stuff. This is the way you could fight all of it. I'm really hoping that this rollout goes smoothly and it becomes an available option for everybody. In California, we have 3 major players, so that might be, Matt, why they use the words may. Yeah. Because maybe like 2 out of 3 have said yes and 1 is dragging their feet. But PG&E is the biggest one, so as long as whatever they do, I think the others will follow suit. But let's hope this is a really fast and amazing rollout, because I love this. This is one of the things I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I did a little back of the napkin math, and Tesla stated that they have over 50,000 Powerwalls in California. So if you take 50,000 and multiply it by 13.5 kilowatt hours, which is what the Powerwall is, you're talking about 675 megawatt hours of battery. Now, of course, it's not going to use all that because they're not going to drain your battery to zero, because I have mine set to 20%. It will never drain past 20%. You might have yours set to 50%. So like even if you take into account something like that, you're still talking about 300 to 500 megawatt hours of energy storage that's available for the grid in those peak usage points. That is a lot of energy storage that you just to flick on basically overnight. All people have to do probably is just in their app say yes, participate, and suddenly your virtual power plant system, it just scales up to an incredible amount. I'm a huge proponent of kind of microgrids and micro strategies like this. It's because you can roll them out faster than building a massive battery plant. It's like it's easier to do this than the other way.
Yeah, and I think it's very scalable too. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the real advantage here is it's very, very scalable and it has network effects, right? So the more people that join, the more utility that each person sees, the more they can share about it, right? Imagine being able to post status that says like, hey, I just hit my, 100th kilowatt hour donated or whatever, that encourages more people to join, and you get this virtuous cycle of, people encouraging other people to help the grid, and then, seeing their trophies for helping the grid, that encourages more people to join, and so on and so forth, right? So, and eventually you have this super elastic, stable, reliable, scalable energy solution.
Exactly.
Yeah, really, really well said. This doc source says it's only 110 degrees here in Phoenix. That's actually, I don't know if he's joking, but it does get hotter than that. I was in Vegas and it was almost 120 degrees for the day that I was there. And Caesar says, why do I have the sudden urge to shave my head? Caesar, I don't know, but I'm gonna guess it's it's a byproduct of the goodness you're looking at here.
Yep. You ready for the next story?
Yeah. Yeah. So the next story, speaking of Tesla, Tesla really is they're trendsetters. I mean, home batteries, self-driving cars, electric cars. They are pretty much the single reason for all of it. But now, after months of kind of thinking about this and wondering what it would come at, Tesla is offering FSD subscriptions for $199 a month. Now, if any of you have looked in your app, you can actually check it out right here and turn it on. There's no long-term commitment, so you could like turn it on for a road trip, see how you liked it, turn it off again, which is the cool thing about subscriptions. The not so cool thing is I just read this right here. It's excluding taxes. So in California, that's probably another $20. So it'd be like $220 a month, which kind of sucks. So I was hoping to see a price closer to 100 to 150, but you do get a lot of stuff with this. Now, this is still FSD, so there's no claim of full self-driving, but if anyone who's seen some of the footage from some of these cars, it is absolutely incredible what they're doing. I was just watching a video from Raj and Gali, who mentioned they've been having zero, disengagement drives for some time. So others have stated there's been a little bit of a regression potentially from some of the rewriting that they've done. But this is really welcome news to anybody who has a Tesla and who doesn't have FSD like me, because I'm definitely going to try this out and see if I like it. And if I do, $200 a month somehow, even though that is a lot of money, that's almost as much as my payment for the car. But I'm glad to see that they're doing this. And I think this will help them with better break-in into the industry. And having Alex on this call, one of the things people have been talking about is the potential for Tesla to be making more money on software. Think about this. If they have 1 million cars on the road, they could be making $200 million a month from this incredible new revenue stream. What do you guys think about this?
Go ahead, Alex.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the subscription model, is very interesting for a wide variety of reasons. First of all, like you mentioned, it's pretty expensive. It's basically a car payment itself. But I think one of the opportunities here is for them to incentivize people to try FSD, right? So the no monthly commitment is certainly one way to do that. Another way to do that is, hey, your first month is on us if you buy some card to the supercharger or some extra package or feature or whatever. They can offer that subscription as part of some larger package, right? The feature costs $10,000 out the gate if you didn't do the subscription. So I think it's a trade-off between, hey, do people want one lump sum or do people want to pay for it with no commitment, turning it on and off over time? But I think the other thing that you really hinted on, Ricky, was this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to software being laid over the transportation platform. For example, when all cars drive themselves, now you have a new Netflix subscription, right? You have streaming hours that are unlocked because your car is driving itself instead of you driving it. You can imagine this ecosystem of apps being built natively for cars that don't exist today. And so on. So, I think once full autonomy is reached and solved, you're talking about another platform for other apps, just like the Apple ecosystem, the Android ecosystem, and so on. What do you think about that?
You want to start with this? We have a couple of super chats, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Klauko, who was our very first super chat last week as well. Thank you, Robert, for your services. We appreciate you. He says, again, first super chat, come on with the likes as well. I can't tell how many likes we have right now, but yes, if you haven't hit that like button, definitely do. And we also have a super chat from Sim Value, who says, did you see the videos by Chuck Cook where FSD loops infinitely? I actually chatted with Chuck when I made a video about FSD, and he had a really cool video where he had a drone flying overhead an intersection. I don't know how he was able to do that, but he had a drone flying overhead so he could see what the car was seeing and kind of like a game of Grand Theft Auto or something. And it was really cool to see how the car was making decisions. So I haven't seen this particular video, but I'll check it out. Thank you for the super chat.
Well, I was going to say about this, like you guys have both said what the potential is for the future of the subscription. My initial reaction when I saw the price was, holy crap, that's too much money. That is insane that they're charging $200 for what it offers today. I would not pay that much money for what it offers today. But 2 years from now, I could totally see it making a lot of sense. And so it's like, from a business perspective, I understand why they set it to this price point. It's better to set it where you think it's going to end up in the future rather than say, okay, it's 99 now and then raise the price later. That's going to be an awful user experience. So it's better to set the bar now. And the other side of it is if you go too cheap, nobody's going to do the buying it up front because you'd make the monthly subscription too low. So it's like they had to price it accordingly. But it's like right now, it's just, I just don't see the value at all. It's like I can't imagine anybody that other than just wanting to try it for a month and see what it can do, that you've never had it before. Like Ricky, you don't have it, so it's like it makes sense why you'd want to try it for a month. I just can't see anybody paying the $200 a month for the way it is right now. But it's like that's kind of the beauty of a subscription, is that if you don't see the value today, you can just wait 6 months. You can wait 9 months, and then when you do see that feature roll out, you're like, there we go. You can just jump on at any time. So it's kind of it's a genius move. There's so much future potential around a subscription like this. And I think you guys are right. It's like, this is kind of like the future for unlocking all kind of software updates. There's so much potential for different things they can add and roll out that are all software subscription-based services that's going to generate a level of revenue that no other car company has right now. It's kind of insane when you think about it.
We're in this weird part of the curve for this where FSD currently is a novel thing. It's very new and fresh. There's not many companies doing it, and it's early on. So is $200 a lot of money or a good price? It's hard to say because what else could you do, right, Matt? There's no, I'm going to go buy this from somebody else on the store. Like when you have the only product on the shelf, there's really nothing you can do about it. But imagine like as this transitions, this will go from novel and new to every car has some version of it to my prediction has always been in 2030, FSD costs $0. You can't charge anything for it. It'll be ubiquitous. It'll be everywhere. If you have a car that doesn't drive itself, no one will buy it. You'll be out of business. And so FSD is like a requirement to be in the game. It'd be like, charging for a data plan on a phone. Like if you don't have a SIM card in your phone, how are you going to use it? It's a must-have kind of a thing. So we are early on in this point, so you'll have to deal with it. But I do think the progress, and maybe it'll be even faster now with FSD beta subscriptions, or with subscriptions, now there'll be more people, more cars, more drivers, more data, and maybe we'll get there even faster. But eventually this will be a commodity, and I think it'll be in 10 years.
I agree. I just got to call out.
We had a super chat.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have now super chats giving out to other super chatters. Eric Kessler said, "Go Robert, leading the way for enjoying this great content." I love the fact he's tipping his hat to another person that gave a super chat.
We appreciate you, Eric. Eric is one of my favorites. Yes, thank you.
So do you have a powerful network effect?
Anything else?
Yeah.
I think the last thing I'll mention here is, at scale, autonomous miles driven should be really cheap, right? So when you're talking about adding $200 a month, it turns out if you do like back of the napkin math, a car has to drive 40 autonomous miles a day to pay for that. So it's like in the end, in urban areas, when we're talking about autonomous taxis and fleet operators driving this as a business, instead of an individual taking it for the occasional road trip, the solution's actually a lot more scalable. So, robo taxis will be quick to pay this back month after month that they incur this cost. So from that point of view, it's actually very, very cheap, just as a devil's advocate example.
Yeah. The issue with that, I would say, is a robo-taxi network is quite a ways off. And the price then, who knows, maybe it'll be 100 or maybe it'll be 500. We don't know which direction it'll go. But I don't think the price will be exactly where it is today. I think it'll either go higher or lower. Probably higher for a while. Again, part of that curve.
Yeah.
I think this will be $500 a month, and then it'll be in 10 years $0 a month, kind of a thing. So
there could also be different tiers. You know what I mean? It's like $200 for personal use, but if you're going to be part of the robotaxi fleet, it's $1,000. It's like they could do tier subscriptions based on what you want to do with your car. So, but there's a lot of potential there, and I really like that you brought up that point. It's one of the reasons we asked you to be on today.
Sure, yeah.
Very good point. We had another super chat, and I think we can move on after that. Karoma says, it would be nice to allow an a la carte subscription. Like, for example, $15 just for Summon and Auto Park. It's a good point. That would be cool if you could break it out into different pieces instead of all or nothing.
Yep.
But
another way to think about
that. Normal autopilot is so good.
Yep.
Yeah, another way to think about that is instead of a la carte that way, what about you pay per autonomous mile driven? Like you drove 112 miles autonomously this time, so we're going to charge you that 30 cents per mile, kind of like a data plan, but you pay as you go, right?
I love that idea. I'd be on board for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so for the next story, we've got Jeep announcing fully electric models in every SUV segment by 2025. And this is the reason I wanted to add this story to today was because we've talked about numerous car companies before rolling out EVs. And yes, it's 2025 or 2027, but it's different market segments and it's different kind of buckets of customers that we're going after here. And I personally have two friends that are like diehard Jeep enthusiasts. They will only buy Jeeps. They love their Jeeps. They're not going to buy anything other than a Jeep. And they had 0 EV options right now. So having this on the market really is fantastic that they're adding this in. But they didn't announce when the first one's going to be available. All they did in their basically 80th anniversary kind of announcement was say by 2025, they're going to have one in each category, but they didn't say when the first one's going to arrive. They had previously shown a EV concept called the Jeep Magneto, which, let me pull up the specs here. The concept had a 75 kilowatt hour battery, 273 pound-feet of torque, and 285 horsepower. So it's a very competent Jeep. I wouldn't say it's going to like set the world on fire, but it seems very competent, very kind of comparable to what the gasoline versions can do. So it's going to be speaking directly to their audience. And it's great to have this option on the market. I'm really looking forward to seeing when they finally bring one to market. I think there's going to be another event in August where we may get more details about when they may be launching these. So,
yeah, this is a weird one because they've been completely radio silent. They really haven't really made much in the way of waves. I will say Jeep does. I've told you before how much I dislike the Fiat Chrysler conglomeration, whatever they're called now. Jeep, though, I don't think they're the highest quality cars in the world by any means, but I do think they are better than the rest, and they're unique in a way that people love them. So this is probably a nice move. It feels super early. Like right now, they're talking about plug-in hybrids. Like they're talking about stuff that they should be talking about like 15 years ago. So to my mind, they're 15 years late. So okay, great. Let's see what you do now. But it is better than nothing, and I do think there's going to be a market for it, especially as like the Rivian comes out and people start showing off their off-roading capabilities, and anybody with a gas car is going to feel foolish at how incredibly incapable a gas engine is, especially low gearing, like rock crawling kind of scenarios where electric cars are going to just wipe the floor with them. So it's a cool move. Stellantis is the new conglomeration I was talking about. I wouldn't touch anything from that company with a 10-foot pole. Personally, I just don't think they're well-built cars. But I hope that they do figure stuff out. And again, you know what you should do if you make really bad gas cars? Switch over to EV. Like the gas engine age wasn't kind to you? Fine. Like let's forget about that and build EVs because you get to level the playing field. Anyway, what do you guys think?
This live stream is sponsored by... No, I'm kidding.
I'm never going to hear from those guys, yeah?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think one thing that you touched on that I think is a really important point is that Jeeps are part of a lifestyle, right? People aren't buying Jeeps because they like the square boxy look. They're buying it because it's part of a brand that kind of epitomizes their lifestyle, right? That off-roading, adventuring, tires on sand, any vertical surfaces not off limits type lifestyle. And it's great that that lifestyle is another one going electric, right? So I think we're going to see more and more that legacy automakers are realizing they can't directly compete with Tesla. So they're going to be releasing EVs in spaces that Tesla just doesn't operate in, right? Another example is the Ford F-150. You can argue the Cybertruck is a direct competitor, but I think if you ask most F-150 drivers today, they're not seriously considering that vehicle, at least right now. Most handymen, et cetera. And that's not to say it's not going to be a competent vehicle, but, there's something to be said about a traditional looking truck that's electric, right? The same with the Jeep. A lot of people just love that look. They can't get it anywhere else. It's part of a lifestyle. They're not considering any other options, just like you mentioned. And so now they have an electric variant of that. So they can join the electric movement without giving up their current lifestyle. And I think we're going to see that with more hatchbacks. We're going to see that with more, insert the market that Tesla doesn't aggressively tackle right now. Somebody's going to come in and say, okay, if Tesla's not in here, I want to own that market.
Exactly. It's like, for me, it's all about the diversity of choice. It's like Tesla's not going to speak to every customer out there, and we need more options.
I mean, that sounds good, but I mean, 5 years from now, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of Rivians out there. Do these people continue to wait it out and say, let's see when they have a car and if it's compelling? There's a quad motor Rivian going to be delivered in months, and I would argue I'd much rather have one of those. So it's one of those things, like, this is the problem with waiting and being really slow, right? Jeep doesn't want to build EVs. They never have. That's why they haven't, right? Now they have to, because if you don't have something on the horizon, you're going to be SOL, and they kind of know it. So this is the problem with that. Like, they have been making gas cars. They've invested nothing, right? So they don't have like huge red lines on their earnings reports and stuff from all their expenditures. But the problem with that is, do you lose out on your future customer base who've moved on past you at that point?
Well, I would actually push back on that a little bit, because Rivian is not competing with Jeep. Two different price points, two different markets. It's technically they can do the same thing, but it's like you're talking about an $80,000 truck versus a Jeep that might be 40 grand. So it's like there's a completely different.
You think
market
early
set there.
Jeeps will be 40 grand for a
I don't know. They have
$75 battery pack?
I
don't know.
I am concerned about that, but I don't think Jeep could come out with an $80,000 car. They'd be laughed away. Like, none of their current customers would go after it. It's too expensive. So they're going to have to create a Jeep that's somewhat close to the price point that their customers would expect. So it's totally different markets. So it's like, I get why you're down on it, but my take is, I don't care why they're going EV, whether they're late to the party or not. It's like, if they're going to do it, I just hope that they're good. And I hope they're a good value, because I want people like my friends who will buy nothing but Jeeps to be able to have a choice. And like right now, they don't have a choice. And these are people that would never buy a Rivian. I can tell you right now, they would never do it.
I've always wondered what percent of the people you're talking about, like, let's say you're a diehard Jeep fan, what percent are excited about the prospect of a EV Jeep, and what percent are like, you know what, if the next all new Jeeps are EVs, I'm buying a used Wrangler because I don't want an EV.
One of my friends actually she brought this up. She said she actually just recently bought one, and she brought up the fact, like, there's no options for her. So she considered the hybrid, like they were talking about the hybrid models, and she thought, maybe I'll get one of those. And she's like, no, I'll just get this one now. And then down the road, when they finally do have something, maybe I'll get that. So it's like, she's open to it, but she's a Jeep first, EVs second or third. So it's like, if it comes down to the line where they have a Jeep that's an EV that comes out, and actually, because of all the torque and all the potential benefits of being an EV, it could make it the best Jeep that Jeep's ever made, potentially. And so it's like, at that point, it's a choice of buying the best product versus buying it because it's an EV. So I think you're speaking to slightly different audiences and motivations.
There was a question earlier, by the way, about which would fare better in deep water, like if you're wading through like a river or something. The EV would, as long as your battery pack is sealed properly. The EV doesn't need any kind of ingestion, so there's no, like, you've seen the Jeeps with the big snorkels to get the air intake up high, which is your limiting factor. You don't want air being taken into the gasoline engine. But yeah, the EV Jeep, I think, would be just an incredible thing.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to make it. I really do. I would love to drive one and see them on the road. And I hope that they get their acts together and get into high gear.
Yeah. It's still very early days for Jeep. This could go completely sideways. I hope it doesn't. So let's get to the last story. Ready, Ricky?
Yeah. So the final story is about something we've alluded to in the past, which is, if you have all these different networks and organizations that are dealing with charging, like EVgo and Blink and Electrify America, that they're starting to offer agreements where you just walk in and, let's say you're a Blink customer and you pull up to a EVgo station, you can still charge. So this is still early on, and I think we talked about how you have to establish standards. There's probably going to be like a payment standard that needs to be established. But this actually also reminds me of toll operators. So in California, we have a couple of different toll companies that you can pay, to go on a toll road. But the cool thing is they all talk to each other. So as long as you have a card, even if the company is a different company, you get billed and they deal with the back end stuff of it. So this will probably be a really critical part of how electric vehicles become more mainstream. Could you imagine having a wallet, you pull out like 12 different cards and oh, this is an EVgo. Let me get my EVgo account and log in or pull out my EVgo app, right? It doesn't work that way for gas cars. We've always talked about how the parity has to be like true parity. You pull up any gas station and you put your credit card in, you pay, and you walk away. There's no memberships or anything like that. Part of what EVs are doing is they're trying to make the experience better, like seamless and touchless. But for that to work, these different companies are going to have to work together. And obviously, you can imagine there's incentives for everybody involved, because you'd hate to, like, maybe if your EVgo customer, I don't know if they would charge like a little small percentage fee for the transaction fee, if you will, or something. But this is going to be really huge. And we've talked about before how, like, Electrify America is selling off $1 billion stake in their company, and as some of these companies build out their infrastructure with more level 3 fast charging, this will be probably one of the crucial elements that make electric vehicles completely ready for mainstream adoption. I would say this might be maybe the biggest thing. Price one, this would be number 2. What do you guys think?
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think this is awesome news. I think you're spot on. Definitely there's 2 things, right? Range anxiety and the fact that it's not a very frictionless experience charging your car today. Another piece of news that's very related to this is Tesla, according to Elon Musk, is also considering opening its charging network to non-Tesla EVs. So who knows whether they'll join, an agreement just like this, or whether it's just some, adapter plus, some business model that just allows EVs to charge there. But I think the overall point is exactly what you're saying. They're trying to mimic and even enhance the gas station experience, where it's like, I don't even look at the brand of gas station I go to. Maybe I have some credit card that rewards me. But other than that, it's like all gas stations are fair game. I never have to worry. If one has a crazy line, I go on to the next. It's a frictionless experience when I get there, super easy to pay, right? And then I just gas up and go. And it's not like that for charging today. So I think doing this will definitely increase adoption. I think you're totally spot on, Ricky.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, this is a kind of a linchpin. Like, when I saw this, my first reaction was, and so it begins. It's like we're finally going to start to see not necessarily consolidation of companies, but companies working together for the greater good, because they recognize by doing this, they're going to make a better user experience. They're going to make their customers happy. It's going to be better for them from a business point of view, as well as from us from a user point of view. The one kind of wrinkle to this is if more chargers just offered touchless payments, it's like it doesn't really matter what network you're on. You could just go up and swipe your credit card. Electrify America, in this article, they talked about how they're rolling out something that's similar to what Tesla does, where in Tesla, you pull up to a supercharger, you plug it in, you don't do anything with the app, you don't do anything with your car, you just plug in and you walk away. And they're doing that with, like, the first car that's got that capability at Electrify America is the 2021 Porsche Taycan. So they have to work directly with the car manufacturers to make that work. But it's hopefully we start to see this more and more, where more cars are like plug in and walk away. These networks are just ubiquitous, and it doesn't matter what card you have, you can just pull in and charge. It's just going to make it so much better. It comes down to the user experience. And you're 100% right about the range anxiety. This is going to do something huge to alleviate that.
Yeah, there's different hosting companies if you have a website online, and whether you have HostGator or Bluehost or whatever the hosting company is, when you go to www.google.com, it works. And that's the key, that fact that we all talk the same language and have a protocol. This is really important too. In California, we have time of use because our electricity prices are absurdly expensive. And as a result, Tesla now, on some of their superchargers, has a different pricing based on what time of day you're charging. So from 4 to 9 p.m., they pay more money, so they're going to make you pay more money. It makes sense. That's just the nature of it. That's a new wrinkle that we don't have in gas cars, right? On a gas car, they do change prices every day or two, or you'll see the guy with the little sign changing them. They're digital now. But this would be, in any given day, the price might change throughout the course of a day. Florida, I don't think this is a concern right now anyway. But here in California, it's just such and Massachusetts is probably right in the middle. Probably, do you guys have time of use on your EV charging?
No.
So this even more, it becomes more important that in car, as I'm driving, I should be able to go, here is an EVgo, here's a Blink, here's a this. They all broadcast that they're operable. And then they even broadcast something like price, and you have all that information in your car, and you can say, you know what, I'll drive 5 miles further to go to the EV Go, which is 8 cents cheaper. And then the car could even do like calculations like you would save this much money. It would know all that, right? If we want a world like that where everything's connected and you have all that information in the car, they have to really nail the protocols and the communication between companies. I think they will. It just makes too much sense not to.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was the last story of the day. So we can jump over to the Q&A portion, taking random questions. We'll start coming through the comments again. So sound off and let us know what you think.
Vikash says, we need nuclear batteries that you charge once a year. Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm in for that.
I'll take 2.
While we're waiting, one thing I'd like to say about that last bit of the story is another way that things can become more fairly priced, or at least more stable like gas, is Tesla's auto bidder, right? So imagine Tesla buys energy off peak time so it can charge customers less, and then if you're a non-Tesla user, maybe it charges you a little more, like closer to peak prices, just because that's an incentive to convert people from non-Tesla to Tesla if they're owning the infrastructure, right? If you're at a supercharger, for example. Otherwise, just having that energy arbitrage and being able to say, hey, we'll buy this while there's excess energy and then we'll use it to offset prices when there's peak pricing. I think that would be a really cool model to see make its way over to EVs.
I agree.
Very good point.
Eric,
There was a...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, Eric just commented, he's still surprised more retailers don't do their own charging, like McDonald's and Wendy's, fast food places. It's like, it's kind of is surprising that more places that you go for half an hour, 45 minutes, you're going to be there parked. It's like, why don't they offer more charging options at those locations? You're going to be there. They could charge a little money for it. So it could be a little extra revenue stream. It's more convenient for us. So it is surprising more places aren't doing it.
It's harder to quantify for companies that don't have that much vision or aren't that forward thinking. It's harder to justify. Like the other day, my wife's birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday, Claudia! And so I wanted to go get her some donuts and some stuff for the kids in the morning. And I went to a place that had a Tesla supercharger right across the street. And so I went to Krispy Kreme. And so I made a choice to go there for that reason, so I could just charge it and get a little bit of charge while I was waiting. So how do you quantify that number? Like, how do you know how much opportunity cost you've lost because you don't have it? It's just harder to justify, but I think companies will eventually get hip to it. And we're early on, but I think it'll definitely improve.
Sorry. Jambay commented, the franchises for McDonald's, Wendy's, and Arby's generate gas, not electricity. Sorry. It was too good to pass up.
So we need more in capture technology, I think. Might be the...
Somebody needs to phone in Taco Bell.
Yes.
Was Taco Bell not on that list? It was not.
They should have led that list.
It was an oversight, yeah. I will say too, I love, Alex, what you mentioned about AutoBidder. AutoBidder seems to be kind of the central answer for a lot of the issues that we're going to see in the future. I had talked to a company CEO of a company called FreeWire, and what they have is this fast charger plus battery. So what's cool is you don't need to have new infrastructure in place for this huge, 100 amp service like that you could potentially be pulling. So instead, if there's no EV charging, it's pulling 20 kilowatts from the wall always and charging the battery. The minute an EV shows up, it takes the 20 kilowatts, passes it to the EV plus the battery for a full DC fast charge. So to the grid, it looks like you're just pulling 20 kilowatts all day, very predictably. So there's some cool, clever ideas, add battery and solar, AutoBidder on top of all of it. And I think some of these problems are solvable. They're not as crazy as people might think. Thanks for all the birthday wishes for my wife. I appreciate that. Eric Burendorf says, Mobileye New York City video. Has anyone seen that yet?
No, I haven't seen it.
No, I got to check it out.
So I mentioned in my video, one of the companies that I had my eye on is Mobileye. I need to reach out to them. I don't really know too much more than like their marketing material, so I haven't really talked too much about them. But Mobileye to me stands as a clear, like, competitor. What do you want to call it? Somebody else who has the right approach to the full self-driving game. They were bought by Intel, so they're well-funded, and they're licensing their tech into a lot of cars. They're camera-based. It's pure vision, and they're one of the companies that I think, because they're licensing to a lot of companies, who could potentially jump ahead of Tesla in terms of the amount of data coming in. They still have to figure out how to churn it all, automate the labeling and the model training and stuff, but really cool video.
And thank you for the super chat, Robert, very much. He said, I love the FreeWire video. Go and watch it if you haven't yet.
Thank you, Robert. A lot of Arby's is dominating the conversation, which I wouldn't have predicted an hour ago.
No. What do you think is going to be at the tip of everybody's tongue? Arby's.
They have the beef. I know the commercials. I've seen the commercials. Can I tell you something? And, I moved to the States when I was 5 years old, so there are things cultural things I don't know. I've never been to an Arby's before.
Seriously?
I've never felt compelled. No. Am I missing out? Is it good? People typically...
No. The curly fries are actually pretty good, but
are they pretty good?
The
Okay.
sandwiches are, I don't know. It's a sliced meat product that is put between two soft buns most of the time.
Well said. Accurately said, yeah.
Rui said, what do you guys think about the new Power Pack solutions?
I haven't seen the new Power Packs.
I don't know if there's a new Power Pack.
I don't know if it's new Power Packs, but they've actually put prices up. Have you seen that?
Okay.
Where you can actually see how much it costs to get things like Mega Packs and Power Packs and things like that. It's kind of fascinating that you can actually go and price out what it would take, what it would cost to make a big battery installation. And of course, it gets cheaper the more you add. But I don't think there's a new Power Pack, but they've rolled out pricing.
They've got a really cool big installation coming into Southern California pretty soon, so I'm excited about that one. Big Mega Pack installation. Uh-oh, we're getting into the burger wars with In-N-Out and Whataburger. I'm not going to touch that one.
That's how you lose all your fans.
So, Alex, what do you have on the horizon? What's a topic you've got kind of coming up, or something you're going to be covering on the video on your channel pretty soon?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually coming out with a video sometime tonight that's focused on Tesla superchargers opening up to other EVs. And how that's going to blow the lid off of their energy business. We talked a lot about AutoBidder this episode, and a lot about energy consumption and how you provide for that energy consumption at peak hours versus off peak hours, how you price it and all that. And so that's kind of the central thesis of my next video. And then what that means for Tesla's stock. My channel is focused on investing in disruptive innovation as opposed to just covering the technology. So sort of through the financial lens. So I just tie it back to, hey, Tesla's energy business today is very small compared to its auto business. Here's one way where both of those come together, right? Supercharging for cars and what that means for the business as a whole.
Sounds fascinating.
Very cool.
Yeah.
One thing this is going to be a very selfish statement, but it's like one thing that I do think Tesla should open up their supercharger network. I have no debate about that. But there's a concern of, what's that going to mean for me as I'm going out and charge? Because it means there's going to be a lot more EVs at every supercharger station, and it means you're going to be battling for charging space now. And so it's like my only concern is Tesla ready for the influx of additional vehicles taking up those spots? Because I don't think they are right now. I don't think they are.
Right.
I think there's certain charging locations that will just be swamped.
So I think that's a wonderful point to bring up. And I think what is going to happen is non-Tesla EVs are going to start paying Tesla money to use their infrastructure. And then Tesla will turn around and build more infrastructure with that money, right? So now you're getting EVs, no matter who they are, paying Tesla to build more infrastructure. And in 20 years, just like we've been saying throughout this episode, when the technology is kind of ubiquitous, when every car is electric, when 80% of all cars are autonomous, whatever, who wins? It's the people with the manufacturing capability and the infrastructure to actually support this platform now that it's fully fledged out and mature, right? Who owns the infrastructure? Well, we've been paying Tesla the last 20 years to charge our cars, no matter what the manufacturer was. So guess who owns the whole grid, right? It's Tesla. So
really good point.
Yeah.
We have a super chat from David Holmes. Good stuff as always. Thanks, guys, and happy birthday, Claudia. Thank you so much, Rob, for David.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. And once again, I've already said it to you, but happy birthday, Claudia.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. She'll appreciate that. She's on here wrangling some more likes and stuff. So
Yeah, she is. she's really good at that.
I need that for my channel. Just a like wrangler. Just like.
But I think, we are officially in the age of the modern space race, which is freaking fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's different. It looks different than it did 50 years ago, but
Well, it's not a cold
we found
war.
ourselves
It's
right in the
not.
middle of another one.
It's not two superpowers vying at each other. Now it's basically billionaires coming at each other, trying to one up each other.
Yeah, egos.
I don't care. I want to get us to space, and this is really exciting to watch. And the potential for the future is just huge. Eric brings up, you think electric heat and AC will make a comeback with cheaper solar at home? What do you think?
Me, you.
Go, Alex, if you have a thought.
Sure. Yeah. I think, I always bring up Tesla, so you can tell I'm kind of a Tesla fan, but I think that's like a natural market segment for them to get into, right? Like HVAC, I think, is something like 40% of a home's overall energy usage or some very high number, right? So it makes a lot of sense to, solve the highest energy burden problems if you're already solving the energy solution. So I can imagine electric heating, super efficient heating, whatever the actual modality will be, making a huge comeback for sure.
Good take.
Yeah, there's for air conditioning, electric is the only way to go. You got to run a heat pump to cool your house. Heating has always been trickier because natural gas, especially in the U.S., is so cheap. So I made a video talking about this. Like, if heat pumps are so great, why are we still burning natural gas? Because it's freaking dirt cheap. It is so cheap to operate. So that's why like resistive heaters are non-existent in homes, really, unless you have like a little room heater, just like a single room. Heat pump heating, I think, will make a comeback, especially because new construction doesn't typically now come with natural gas hookups. So a lot of new neighborhood developments that are being created, I've heard in Texas, in California, in New York, they don't have natural gas hookups. So you remove that from the equation, and now you've got to find an alternative. And I think heat pumps, reversible heat pumps that can be both air conditioning and heating, will definitely be a bigger part of the future.
Yeah, the one thing I tend to see a lot of Tesla fans, and I'm a Tesla fan, that tend to put a lot of this on Elon to solve. Like, he's going to come out with some radical HVAC design that's not out there already. And I would kind of say pump the brakes on that and look at what's out there, because Mitsubishi already has a ductless heat pump system that is one of the cheapest, most cost-effective ways to heat and cool your home that's out on the market. And the reason I know about this is I'm working on building a home, and every home builder I'm talking to is like, get one of these Mitsubishi systems. It comes with this Mitsubishi system. So if Tesla comes out with something, my guess is it's going to be very similar to that. It's a very small, cost-efficient system that is really amazing.
Yeah, Alex, if you're not aware, Matt is working on an evil lair where it'll be his
The Matt
it'll
Cave.
be his headquarters, the Matt Cave. I made a video
That's awesome.
last week. On volcanoes, and it was really about like how do we stop them from erupting, but it wasn't doing very well. So I kind of switched gears more to about like volcano energy sources is like kind of a geothermal source of energy. But in that video, one thing I mentioned is right now homes don't really talk to each other. So you have waste heat from every refrigerator just getting pumped into the room that you then have to run the air conditioning again, right? So imagine if we had like a hot line, if you will, a hot like copper line where you could discharge all heat to, and that heat could then be running like a Stirling engine, or it could be running a your hot water heater or something else, right? So now like hot supplies of energy don't just get wasted, but they could actually be used to do work in a meaningful way. So that might be kind of the house of the future, where everything's connected as opposed to just one-off appliances everywhere, just making heat, creating heat, moving heat, and not considering the entire house as a whole.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Tesla does so well in their engineering of their cars. fewer parts, shorter hoses, shorter electrical wires, because they're looking at the system as a whole and designing it as a whole. Where competitors like Ford, like the Ford Mach-E is the best competitor to Tesla that they've seen yet. And yet when you pull it apart, Sandy Munro's been showing like, this is the best competitor to Tesla, but yet look how much extra hoses and parts and stuff there are, because they're using separate parts that were engineered separately, not as a whole system. And so it's kind of slapping stuff together. If you take the house as a whole, there's so much you can do. And we have a super chat from John Chuck. Tesla needs to open up superchargers in Minnesota. There's nowhere else to charge for non-Tesla EVs. There's a huge business potential there, as Alex pointed out.
Yeah, it's massive and it's far-reaching.
Yeah,
for sure. To your point, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
To your point about legacy automakers, right? They can't easily make that switch either to think like Tesla because they rely on a bunch of third-party vendors, right? The reason that systems engineering is so piecemeal is like they get a part from some other company and then they have to integrate that part as is into their vehicle, right? It's a lot of vendors coming together to build legacy automobiles, as opposed to Tesla, who tries to fully vertically integrate and control every piece themselves. So they're able to do that. So just one thing I want to point out is if tomorrow some guy from Ford looks at this podcast and goes, wait, we should do that, that's what's stopping them from doing that.
Yeah, it's the commonality of the parts bin. If you're a car maker for 100 years, you have this huge parts bin. You don't have to go make a new button for ABS and you have them all laying there, just reuse stuff. But the drawback is you're always using old stuff. So, an HVAC system or like a battery cooling system is burdened by the legacy usage of it as opposed to being free to rethought, right? The ID4 has no front trunk. Explain that one to me. That's a weird thing to be. It's like you've seen how to do it, but you still don't have the space to have a front trunk. So these are the kinds of limitations that I think people will figure out. And these are early EVs. You got to remember that like in 5 or 10 years, we're going to have really compelling stuff, and we'll have gone a long ways in a short period of time.
Yeah, it's the innovator's dilemma, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, we're at 3 o'clock, so we've kind of hit our time limit here. So we're going to wrap it up. First, I have to say thank you, Alex, for joining us today. It's been awesome to have you here. I love hearing your take on this stuff. And if you haven't subscribed to his channel, you need to go subscribe to his channel. He puts out some great videos about just breaking all the business down, the finances down, and why things matter. It's fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, I think you'll be a guest far more into the future. So thank you.
Yes.
I'd love that. Yeah.
And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. We're live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can also listen on the go for the podcast version at viceversa.show. As always, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.